Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session, the first session of Analysis by Synthesis series. This is a new series by The Analytic, where we bring scholars from all around the world and across philosophical disciplines to explore foundational issues in the field, not just in philosophy, but in neighboring fields as well. My name is Yunus Şahin, and I will be the moderator of today's event. We are very excited to host Kalevi Kull as our first speaker. He is, as you may know, he is one of the leading figures in biosemiotics, contemporary current biosemiotics. Maybe a couple of words might be in order here about biosemiotics. Biosemiotics is an interdisciplinary field that studies science systems, meaning, communication, and interpretation in living systems. It asks how life itself, from the simplest organisms to complex ecosystems, can be understood as a network of sign relations. Rather than viewing biological processes as purely physical, purely mechanical, or purely computational, biosemiotics interprets them as semiotic, signful processes grounded in relational and dialogical processes as well. Professor Kull's lecture today will explore how this perspective sheds light on some of the most fundamental properties of living systems, like speciation, arbitrariness, freedom, umwelt, and the aesthetic dimension, each reframed through the science systems perspective. Before we begin, just a couple of brief notes. Firstly, the session is being recorded and will later be made available on YouTube. If you are comfortable, we encourage you to keep your camera on, so it helps create a more lively, more interactive environment setting. Also, please keep your microphones muted during the talk. And during the Q&A, you will be able to either raise your hand or drop your questions in the chat, however you like. And I think we are ready. Without further delay, please join me in welcoming Kalevi Kull. Kalevi, if you're ready, we can begin.
Oh, dear friends and colleagues, life is wonderful. And I have been biologist since childhood. I'm living in Estonia, lived here all my life, and so today also speaking from Tartu. As a biologist, first, as every biologist, say, interested in living beings, you study them as necessary aspects just to distinguish between species, then starting to recognize communities, then asking questions, first something more superficial, then going deeper and deeper in order to understand and to explain all these life phenomena. And so that led me to theoretical biology, and there, stepwise, it appears that questions and problems led to the field already now. What joins semiotic understandings and biology. Semiotics is about meaning making, signification, communication, all these processes, and now in the arm of pre-human or non-human, or actually, non-rationalist, let's say, life. So now I have some slides, which I hope should be those. Can you see them? Yeah?
Yeah, of course. Great.
Very good. Now, so Yunus asked me to tell about biosemiotic view on life, and so let me share some notes about fundamental features of living systems as these are understood with help of semiotics. No, they didn't move. You see the next slide, do you? Excellent. So, the everlasting question for biologists is what is life, what is to be alive, what is that is in one end, and in another end there is the question what is it to be a human. So for a biologist, these are the boundary questions, the origin of life and the origin of human. Biological life is in between, but for its understanding, the boundary questions are unavoidable. If, let's say, imagination makes us human, as Giambattista Vico already proposed, or Yuri Lotman has proposed, then probably the biological needs make us, or make one alive. So that's a life always between, so the primary anticipation or need for impression on the one side and temptation or deadly sins or morality in the other side. I'm not going to focus on these boundary problems today. Instead, let's look into some problems in between. However, rather general problems for biology. So there are several general characteristics of living systems or life's attributes, as these are called. Well, classically, like metabolism, reproduction, variability, homeostasis, differentiation, sensibility. These are the ones listed when one approaches biology as a natural science using this physicochemical methodology. But when we arrive the semiotic aspects, then semiotic processes, then here we see some, let's say, additional attributes of life, like speciation or self-categorization, arbitrariness or habituation, freedom and indeterminacy, umwelt or subjective simultaneity, and aesthetic and beauty. And we'll today just speak a little bit about these. This is also, we could say, a social life of living patterns. A social life, means communicative, and we also will be interested in development of patterns. So when we look on life as dynamic system and also semiotic system as dynamic system in its evolvement, then important feature, actually the feature one is interested in any field of science, is the state of balance, the stationary states, stationary processes. And in dynamic system theory, these are called attractors. Attractor is defined as a set of states toward which a system tends to evolve. Looks attractor as a term may well look as if it is teleological, but you see from the definition it's not at all as this. This is simply just the state or set of states towards which a system tends to evolve. And we can also think of collective dynamic attractors, and the state itself as not truly stationary, but kind of semi-stationary, as it usually is the case in this complex dynamic systems, including semiotic systems. And so semiotic balance, this is a dynamic equilibrium as based on semiotic processes. So that's, I think, is just something what's important to look at and to always to keep in mind as something what needs to be explained. And now these core concepts, self-categorization, which actually can be seen or explained as stabilization phenomenon in communicative system, then arbitrariness as a product of autonomous mediators, freedom as a result of incompatibility, which appears if to abandon the principle of non-contradiction, umwelt as coextensive with species present, or just umwelt as simultaneity for somebody, and aesthetic as a feature of complex semiotic fitting. So now one by one. Speciation or self-categorization. This is related to everlasting question or problem in biology: what is species, and from where it comes from. Say the whole Darwinian discourse has been around it, but the problem itself is older than that, and still has not been well, completely understood, I would say, before semiotic explanation. Because here, as we see it, and can just argue that it is really a stabilization phenomenon in communicative systems. So that explanation comes from an entomologist, Hugh Patterson, who proposed it around 50 years ago as a recognition concept of species. He pointed out that in all those organisms who reproduce using or requiring two parents have something like specific mate recognition system, This is where two organisms recognize each other. And that is, say, the basic process what then leads through reproduction, through bioparental reproduction, further to species categories as dynamic attractors, where the range of species variability is determined by the recognition window. And the distance between neighboring species is at least of the size of recognition window. Here, this scheme now tries a little bit to illustrate that understanding through a model, say to organism P1 and P2, can give an offspring in the condition if their difference is smaller than their recognition window. That if it's they differ more, they cannot match, they cannot recognize each other, and reproduction is impossible. So the other condition is concerning inheritance. Simply the offspring should be not very different from parents. And so in this case, if we initially have rather homogeneous, let's say, just population with relatively homogeneous frequencies of different forms or different genotypes, if you will, initially, then through, well, basically random meeting between the organisms and those which, when meeting, are more similar than the limit of recognition window says, give offspring, then it occurs that such a homogeneous distribution is simply unstable. And through some, some tens or maybe 100 of generations, the distribution is developing, this evolving towards such semi-discrete distribution where there are groups, subgroups of the whole population, inside which the differences are close to, maximally close to recognition window, whereas the neighboring species are in the distance of at least the recognition window. So you can, that's not very difficult to make just a mathematical, numerical model for this, and you can easily see that indeed the homogeneous distribution is not stable, and always it leads to some kind of categorization. And this concerns now not only not only communication between organisms and their reproduction, but a similar mechanism is working in case of perceptual categorization. So where in the neural network exist self-reproducing states, and as a result of what's called non-supervised learning, you get categorization in the perceptual field. So, in case of, in principle, that also happens in case of artificial neural networks. Usually, these artificial neural networks are trained in supervised way. So let's say there's photos of cats and dogs are given, and in supervised case picture and the name are given together. But in case of unsupervised learning, data are not labeled, but even in that case, say, neural network can make these categories more or less in one, the cats and other the dogs. Sometimes some pictures are falling. Some dogs are in the category of cat and so on, but more or less like this. So that is important here, that this is a rather simple process, and we see it in nature now in all organisms which require this sexual communication in order to reproduce. So, and just interesting, just to add, is that the same, analogically the same, happens in perceptual categorization in many organisms also, but for that purpose they do need something like neural network. So now this self-categorization makes categories, but not really correspondences, until the categories will not be labeled. The correspondences or mappings between something that otherwise are not linked somehow through physical-chemical causality, appear as often called through codes. Genetic codes, ecological codes, neural codes, many other codes. So, here the mechanism is based on a mediator, which can reproduce independently. Here now, on one hand, there is a stimulus, or sometimes called messenger. Then this would specifically link or attached to mediator, and then the mediator's state is changing or modified through that link, which the other end of the mediator makes then, as a result, connection to effector. Stimulus and effector may not have anything in common between each other, neither chemically or whatever way. They might not be to make any connection otherwise than through the mediator. Well, in biology, usually in the cell, say the mediator is a kind of enzyme or complex organic molecule or complex of molecules. In the simplest case, this is like receptors of signal transductions or signal transducers, which connect these first messengers with primary effectors. These are, in a way, protein or enzyme molecules with two active centers, which make this connection. In a little more complex case, this is a mediator is a ribosome, then making then mapping between messenger RNA and the protein, which is synthesized as a result. Now, important feature or necessary feature here is for anything to be a mediator is that it is reproducing independently. So independently of the stimulus and effector. And that is really true in case of ribosome, for instance. And well, in principle, the mediator can also be kind of, organism, what makes a link between some, let's say, even two other organisms, you may think, but or whatever. In case of, let's say, ecological codes. So here some the feature of this what we can see the, let's say, relation between the stimulus effector is now we can call arbitrary. Arbitrary, say, in the sense that the mediator, so to say, decides what to link to what. And this arbitrariness here is of the same kind as formulated by Ferdinand de Saussure as the first principle of semiology. The bond between the signifier and the signified is arbitrary, which means that now in cognitive processes or in processes where, say, in case of Saussure, he's speaking about linguistic processes. The sound image and the concept are linked arbitrarily. So they otherwise, without certain mediator in between, there wouldn't be any connection between them. So arbitrariness is, say, really important feature of any meaning-making processes. And if we now look briefly to the forms of arbitrariness, then we see there are several levels of it, which also correspond to the levels of indeterminacy. The right column speaks about the levels of arbitrariness. So I just described that first one where we see the link as a mapping, like RNA or DNA is mapped to protein, for instance, or any other heterogeneity is mapped to another one. So the arbitrariness here, about which we already can speak here, is a kind of indeterminacy in the sense that the stimulus is not really determining the effect because say determination we usually mean in terms of the physicochemical relation, but due to that independent mediator, there is no such link between them, and in that sense, this relation is not determined. It is there exists the first order indeterminacy. That's why we can speak here about arbitrariness. And then this is the next level is well, if the first level is mapping, like say something like map or relation between map and territory, the second level would be the choice between existing maps, which is already well, more complex problem, or the next level indeterminacy, second order determinacy, or and choosing as the next level of arbitrariness. Going on this ladder of levels, we can then go to the mapping a map to another map, which is often called labeling. Yeah, and in that case, we could speak third order indeterminacy already, and further on, we can also think about imagination, which is something like creating map without territory at all. This is now truly a human feature. Also, we can speak about the same levels or similar levels in terms of habits, when the first one is just a feature of acquired habit as distinct from the physical law. That's where what learning always does. Then next is choosing from habits. Then next is creating a new habit from a combination of the existing ones. And well, here this level is already something like syntax in case of language, and then the next is creating a new habit irrespective of the existing ones, which is what happens in the case of imagination. So now here this arbitrariness is, or indeterminacy is clearly speaking us about feature what we can call freedom. These levels are now somehow levels of freedom. And freedom, this is obviously somehow related to the concept of, or phenomenon of cause and causal relationship. Now, asemiotic relationship, causal relationship, and if they are, in which sense? Causality, as it is understood in physics, is time relation. Usually you say physical understanding, physical description, let's say, of the world, states that everything has a cause. Every next moment of time depends of the previous moment of time. So that means the time relation itself and causality, physical causality, are more or less the same thing. The principle or law of non-contradiction, as formulated already by Aristotle, which is the principle followed in strictly, we could say, in natural scientific description of the world. That something cannot exist and cannot exist and not exist at the same time. So, and that principle of non-contradiction actually presupposes temporality and implies causality. So this linear time and physical causality and principle of non-contradiction are really deeply connected, as in some sense they are different sides of the same coin. But now, as Jesper Hofmeyr has formulated, in living systems, determinacy is built upon indeterminacy. And that's, another formulation of Charles Peirce's understanding that firstness is the field of indeterminacy. So semiotic relations are based on indeterminacy. How it can be if everything has a cause, so that leads to understanding that true indeterminacy, that means freedom, presupposes time independence. Indeterminacy as such cannot be there if we accept just and only this linear time. And also, we can have indeterminacy as such only if we abandon the law of non-contradiction. So, or in with more general way to state it, because since contradiction is usually well defined on the level of language or presupposing language, but here in biological realm we are speaking about semiotic processes which are pre-linguistic. So then we could instead speak about incompatibility. It's logical incompatibility in the sense of Persian understanding of logic, so which can be also pre-linguistic. So, and if we have that indeterminacy and freedom indeed, then this allows for free choice as such. So, but you see, in order to have free choice, we should have atemporality. Or at the same time, we should accept the existence of something to be true and false at the same time. Like it is so nicely expressed in this famous picture by Magritte, a picture of pipe, what at the same time says this is not pipe. So this has become a kind of emblematic picture for semiotics. You can see in many book covers often of semiotics. But even there, it's not always understood strictly as a representation of yes and no at the same moment, at the very same time, that it is a pipe and it is not a pipe. So you understand that this is logically contradictory, and since it is logically contradictory, it can provide meaning. So, and here, where we get next, is umwelt. Because indeterminacy exists just only and always in the subjective space, which we call umwelt. Because the umwelt is the simultaneity of many for somebody. So umwelt is coextensive with the now, with species present, of the moment of which has some duration in physical time, but which is just simultaneous, in some sense atemporal, for a subject. And so actually this is what everybody of us just can directly feel and see as you can see in this slide, more than 1 pixel in time at the very same moment. That means you have this atemporality. You have umwelt as real for yourself. So here a little comment. So because umwelt is some strange phenomenon, and you know that some philosophers really avoid its existence. Closer to semiotics, also say there are some approaches like in activism which doesn't like to speak about that concept at all. So they also don't speak about representation. So, but we may actually think of umwelt as a representation, and at the same time as we can describe it as a kind of hidden variable or confounder. So the concept of hidden variable, like it's used in some areas, for instance, in statistics, is an extraneous variable that correlates directly or inversely with both the dependent variable and the independent variable. But therefore, due to that correlation, it looks as if there is a direct relationship between dependent variable and independent variable, but actually there is not. All that relation is due to that the third, that confounder, or some kind of hidden variable, or here even like a mediator. So, and further, in umwelt, we every living being who has it, and I do think that umwelt exists for maybe almost all living beings. I can't be sure whether for all and everybody. Maybe the first cells could not have it, but if there are more than one functional circle which are in the relation of, let's say, alternativity, that they cannot function at the same time, however, they are available and somehow existing for organism at the same moment as possibilities, then they should have umwelt. So that, but I think there is now one of really unsolved problem for biosemiotics, and maybe this is one of most interesting and deep unsolved problems in science altogether. Say, what are the truly minimal conditions for this contradiction or incompatibility in nature to exist. So now these relations, what organisms make, So we spoke about these mapping relations already, but on the next level here, if they do have umwelt, they can relate what there exists in umwelt, the categories made in umwelt, also relate them, and these relationships, some are fitting better to each other, some are not. Likewise, in case of habits, behaviors, already in the community of organisms, relations between organisms, some fit well, some don't fit so well, and these relation systems are evolving stepwise towards better fitting, towards a removal of unfittedness as much as possible. And this, kind of search in the field of multiple habits, multiple relations, is evolving now towards a kind of attractor. And this attractor finally is characterized via multiple semiotic alignment or coherence or fitting. And what is aesthetic? Aesthetic is a multiple, plural alignment, coherence, and fitting. So this means such attractor in the community of communicating organisms is beauty. It is an aesthetic feature, and as an attractor, it is beauty. And we could say conclude that the organisms' communicative processes are evolving towards beauty, and this evolvement is an aesthetic process. So, and very interestingly here, this doesn't concern only relationships between organisms and their communication, but also already in the processes within organism itself, including, for instance, say, eye movement as going on in umwelt, which is a sign process, which evolves towards semiotic alignment. And if it finds coherence, semiotic fitting, then this is also beauty. So, we get here a very rather deep understanding in this way what is aesthetic and how it comes already from biological, semiotic, biological, biosemiotic processes. Okay, these 5 features we were describing. First, species or categories are dynamic attractors in communicative systems. Arbitrariness and codes result from autonomous mediators. Freedom presupposes simultaneity of alternatives. Umwelt is the space of now, and semiotic balance is nothing else than beauty. Just a comment about the latter, say when the system arrives at the indeterminacy or freedom of the level of capacity to be sinful, that means the human level of imagination and combination, then this is also this allows to the system to evolve, human system then to evolve not towards beauty, but just even towards something very ugly. But this is now the fundamental tragedy of human species. But let us be positive and now speak only on biological, biosemiotic life. So, thank you.
Thank you, Kalevi, for this wonderful and thought-provoking talk. We'll now open the floor for Q&A session, discussion session. If you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand via the react button on Zoom. I'll call on you in order. When it's your turn, please feel free to unmute yourself. And also, you can type your question in the chat. Yeah. Are there anyone? Is there anyone who wants to ask or raise some concerns or confusions, or maybe I can start with a question. Yağmur Hocam, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Kalevi. That was wonderful. I, as someone working in the field of dynamic systems, have some problem with using the dynamic system description, particularly the concept of attractor, because I find dynamic system approach in a way limiting. Let me try to explain why. Because the whole description of dynamic systems relies on the conservation of the state space. So whatever happens in the state space itself doesn't change. It doesn't change its dimensionality. So whatever will emerge, whatever new will emerge, will happen within that state space. Whereas I think, from my own perspective, that in order to account for semiotic processes and life processes, we have to amend the dynamic system approach with the possibility of unfolding of the state space, the emergence of new dimensions, additional dimensions, which would really cause problems from the given state space perspective. And it would also very well account for indeterminacy. So let this be
Right. Yeah, I agree, and I clearly see this problem with using this dynamic system axiomatics. But actually, what we need is some concept what is at least analogical to attractor. So,
yes.
And say we probably can somehow generalize that concept so that we could speak something towards which semiotic systems evolve, also, yeah, as a generalized attractor or something like that. But otherwise, of course, the initial conditions, what I used for description of states space, that is just they are insufficient.
As a matter of fact, I would add these dynamics, particularly new relations introduced via semiosis, sometimes, and aesthetics is one of these cases, actually, the emergence, the convergence of certain things gives rise to temporarily conserved state spaces, which allows us to describe things. There is this conserved thing, for example, a category, a new species, but evolution continues, and now and then new relations introduce new dimensions, and then we go to the next step. So that's might be an approach to combine the two.
Right.
Thank you.
Ibrahim Hocam, go ahead, please.
Hi, I'm a medical doctor, so I have very limited knowledge about semantics, so semiotics. So maybe my questions look naive. Do you mean that you use semiotics to understand or explain the biological systems as a metaphor? You use semiotics as a metaphor to understand or explain biology, or you use biological interactions as a metaphor to explain semiotics, or there are semiotics in the biological systems? Yeah, this is my question.
Yeah, a very good question. Actually, here indeed we mean semiotic processes in living itself. So that means some of the processes which are there in the body of living body are semiotic processes. So the first we simply, as much as there is a communication which is somehow meaningful for organism itself, then there is semiosis. So of course it is not so easy to distinguish, to put a finger that just that one is now already semiosis, but at least in the well, if we are not asking about the simplest part, the more complex, then probably it is easier. Like say in processes of perception already, these are rather obvious. But about semiotics and medical science, let me just add that there have been printed semiotics handbooks in early 19th century for medical doctors. And so the most of 19th century European universities taught semiotics as a subject for medical doctors, and that was meant by it the study of science of health and disease, because these science are mediating really the real processes for doctors. Say because you in order you cannot see the disease itself, but only its science. It's science. So that's science of science as semiotics, and that was called semiotics in medical science.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Maybe I can start. Oh, sorry, maybe I can ask something. I think one of the things that I most struggle with when it comes to semiotics is that what counts as explanation in biosemiotics? What I mean by this is that, for example, I mean every modeling practice gives us some insight, gives us some form of understanding about something, whether they are true, whether they are correct, whether they are coherent or not. So in every framework, practitioners, scientists, philosophers should try to demarcate between some forms of good understanding and some forms of bad understanding. So when it comes to, I mean, in biosemiotics, when we say that, when can we say something is explanatorily powerful rather than mere modeling attempt? Yeah, this is because, I mean, for example, I mean, this is not directly related to the talk, today's talk, but I found myself thinking about the relations between the processes and semiotic concepts, about thinking about, sorry, I find myself thinking about these relations and, you know, struggling with some questions like, okay, but there could be some competing explanations as well. There could be some competing modelings as well. I mean, where should we draw the line between those competing explanations or relations between for any given phenomena or in general? Yeah, I think that's the question.
Yeah, explanation is based on models always, of course. And now so then we are comparing models as using evidence in order to compare and to find which model is better or which is worse. So now how it works with models of semiotic processes. So I do think here that, for instance, this when we go to, let's say, search behavior of organisms, and how it then is organized, how it evolves. So there, these semiotic models seem to work. Now, whether some other models also work, in principle, yes, we can, in all cases, apply more than one model. Interesting aspect here is that you can actually describe everything through physical models, which are excluding meaning making. And you can also explain or just describe the whole world with semiotic models, which include knowledge as such. So semiotics is always speaking about the aspect of knowing, or in some at least primitive sense of knowing. So physical models do not include knowing as such into the models. So now when knowing has any role in the phenomenon we are explaining, so then that means that semiotic model seems to be necessary.
Um,
So briefly, what I can say probably now.
Thank you. But I think I mean, I should clarify something. I wasn't, in fact, trying to compare biosemiotics with some other frameworks, but I was just trying to find a way to decide between two competing biosemiotic models for any given phenomena. I mean, it's rather a local question, not about other frameworks, but inside the biosemiotics itself.
Yeah, here then, for instance, we have binary models of semiosis, triadic models of semiosis, and more complex ones. So, and here some scholars who have worked with these different models have decided that, let's say, triadic models explains much better than binary model. That's just, well, uh, coming from scientific experience and history. So why they find these triadic models working better than binary? Okay, because the emergence and emergent phenomena are well easier to to explain through triadic models. So, for instance.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Maybe we can take one or two more questions. Apparently, no. Thank you, Kalevi, for this.
Then I suggest to read everybody this book I first showed in my first slide that was by Donald Favreau, Essential Readings in Biosemiotics. This is a very nice book of a long introductory article about the history, and so also commented anthology so until the year 2010.
I think Işıkkın wants to ask a question. Sorry, by the way, I couldn't see your hand. Of course, you can ask a question. Go ahead, please.
I forgot. I'm sorry about that. Professor, thank you for your speech. I'm looking at the screenshot of your slide, and my question is about arbitrariness. You defined, like, positioned arbitrariness as a product of autonomous mediators, right? And you defined them as independently reproducing. And when I try to make sense of it, what comes to my mind is like a genetic code, like functions like ribosome, a messenger like mRNA, RNA, and it maps a messenger to amino acid, for instance, right? Is that a concrete?
Yeah.
So my question, how does like a system move from like the indeterminacy of this state to establishing a new habit? Like if what I'm questioning is the initial emergence of this habit, this mapping. If there is no direct physicochemical causality link, how the initial mapping emerge? So this arbitrary, I'm trying to make sense of arbitrariness, but I tend to think in terms of determinate factors pressing upon the habits. So how can we explain the initial emergence and arbitrary mapping?
Yeah, in case of genetic code, Actually, nobody knows yet precisely how it, well, what's its origin, how it precisely occurred, but it seems so that this was pretty much due to random, random processes there, which is, well, not the case in most other codes. Already. Genetic code, once first appearing maybe randomly, so have later also diversified, so that's including the fact that our own body, each of us, includes at least two different genetic codes. One is in our cell nucleuses, and the other is in our mitochondria, so which are slightly different from each other. So, and here then again, so the how, kind of random mutations or something like that have been part of it. But later, when this is already kind of levels of habits, then it's not that much of randomness here, but the learning is having a part. So, yeah. So, a partial answer. I'm sorry.
No, thank you. I understand.
Thank you. I think that's pretty much it. It's time to say goodbye. Thank you, Kalevi, for your time, for accepting our invitation, for your generosity, and also thank you everyone who joined us today and make this event happening. So see you next time, and please don't forget to follow us on social media. Bye.
Thank you, Yunus, for organizing all this, and thanks everybody for attending.